This happened a few years ago, right after I graduated college. I would make an 8-hour drive home a few times a year to see family, usually over the holidays. During these trips, there was only wilderness, fields, mountains, and tiny towns along the way. During one of these trips, I stopped at a gas station to get some food, and I apparently lost my debit card, or it was stolen. It was a card I never used and looked identical to my main one, so I didn't notice it was missing until later when I got a call from my bank and I saw my account was overdrafted. Being fresh out of college making $12 an hour, the $400 was a huge deal. I worked at a credit card processor at the time, so I had a very unusual familiarity with how credit card transactions worked. This was a debit card, but ran as credit. I could have done a chargeback, of course, but I knew that merchants were fined $15 for each chargeback on top of the return and got a ding on their record with Visa MCAMEX. If they had too many chargebacks, they would have their processing revoked and incur heavy fines. Merchants are usually mom and pop shops and are usually innocent in the matter, so I decided to give them a call. Also, the charges all came from the same gas station that I lost it at, so I suspected it was an employee who stole my card and was stupid enough to use it at work. I wanted to let the manager owners know so they could keep an eye out for unscrupulous employees. Employee theft is unfortunately common and is not brought to light until a customer brings it up. I thought I would just give them a call and ask for the refund. Easy. I call, and a woman answers. I ask to speak with a manager, and she says she is the manager. I explained that I had lost my card at that location, and someone had later used my card there. I said I didn't want to accuse anyone, but I think one of her employees had the card, and she may want to investigate. I also said I'd like a return for all the purchases to save them the hassle of a chargeback. When I usually work with managers in this situation, they're very willing to help and take employee theft very seriously. Instead, I met with hostility and insults. She told me I probably deserved it for losing my card in the first place and not noticing, and I deserved this lesson. She interrupted me and told me to basically get lost and none of her employees would steal. Getting a bad feeling, I ask for the number of the owner. She says there is no owner. What? By now, I'm shaking in anger, so I tell her I'm calling the police and hang up. She tries to call back, and I don't answer. By now, I'm angry and crying. I have a feeling I know who did it, but now I need to prove it. I had no intention of calling the cops because what cops care about some petty credit card theft? It's incredibly hard to prove, and most cops have murder and other important stuff to worry about. Lucky for me, this is in the middle of nowhere. Population, 100 or something. First, I call my bank and ask if they have the record of the exact times the card was used. They gave me the times down to the minute. I then call the police and get a very friendly woman. It seems she's not busy and actually listens to my story, including the hostile manager. I ask if she's able to go look at the surveillance tapes or something. She says the store is 5 minutes away and she will stop by. I guess she felt sorry for me or was bored, but I'll take it. She says she'll give me a call if she finds anything. I eagerly awaited her call but was not expecting much. A couple days go by and I get a call from the nice officer lady. She says that she went by the store and reviewed the footage. At the exact time I told her, the cameras caught the hostile manager making the purchases and signing receipts for the exact same amounts with a card that looked exactly like mine. Even better, they were going to charge her with felony identity theft since making purchases on someone's card without permission is identity theft on top of monetary theft, at least in my state. I felt a sense of pride for actually sticking up for myself and not just taking the money from my bank and letting the thief go. I'm a pretty small and non-confrontational person, but that day I felt like a strong person. If she'd been nice and worked with me, or even just apologized and done the returns, I would not have called the cops. Because she was so rude and unhelpful, she got a felony instead. Friend told me about a guy he knew named Ben and how he met out some crazy revenge. Ben was driving himself down Johnson RD. Now Johnson Road was one of those uncommon roads in suburbia that was kind of narrow. As he was driving, There were these three guys, walking shoulder to shoulder along the road with their backs to him. Not trying to hit them, Ben moved to the far left side to avoid them and give them enough safe space. Turns out it was a ruse by those three kids to get cars to pass along them just like that. When he passed by them, they took out baseball bats they were hiding and started smashing his car as he passed, took out his side mirror and caused minor damage. Ben wasn't too happy, so he pulled over and got out of his car to address this. Not too smart, since it's already 3-1, but you'll understand in a minute. The three kids see him and realize their advantage and start charging at him, bats raised. Now, here's where it gets good. Ben pulls out a gun and tells them all to freeze. Turns out Ben is a retired Marine with a concealed weapons permit. The three kids freak out and stop dead in their tracks, arms raised. Ben directs them to get on their knees, lay face down, and keep their arms and legs spread out. Now, this was back in 2000 when cell phones weren't as common, but Ben happened to have one. He called the cops on the kids right then and there. He said, "My name is Ben. I'm on Johnson Road and three guys just attacked my car and threatened to attack me. I am carrying a gun with a permit and have them on the ground and subdued. I need an officer to come by here as I am pressing charges and I want them arrested. When the officer arrives, I am the one with the gun and I will follow his instructions." The kids start begging for him to let them go, cursing each other and probably giving sob stories, but Ben's not listening. The cop arrives, orders Ben to put down his gun, which he does, and then it gets better. Turns out the cop is a retired Marine too. He hears Ben's statement, sees the evidence, and then they have this exchange. "So they came right at you?" "Yes, they did. And you didn't try shooting, right?" "Of course not. They listened to my commands, so I didn't see the need." The cop then looks at the three guys and says, "You're lucky you got him and not another crazy person who would have shot at you to defend themselves from three people attacking them out of nowhere." So the three of them get arrested, and the cop tells them that they're most probably going to jail for this, and there's no easy way out of this. All three end up going to jail, indeed for the maximum sentence our state allows for this crime. Sorry for making this long, but the context is pretty important. So, my little sister, who is the sweetest girl in the world, is 12 years old but can't walk or communicate. Her mental age is around 6 months. She obviously cannot attend a regular school, but since we live in a big city, there is a wonderful school for kids like her, even though we don't own a car since we don't need one. We got the city to put up signs in front of our house designating a 4-meter spot for wheelchair pickup and drop, off for her school bus every morning and afternoon. The signs went up perhaps 2 years ago, and after the first week we never really had any issues, since most of our neighbors are wonderful and totally understanding of situation. For some context, we live in a perhaps poorer community, though we're well off, but in our 9 years here we've had nothing but great interactions with everyone here. Sadly, the neighborhood is gentrifying, and we're getting more self-centered people with their Mercedes-Benz or Audis honking while my sister gets loaded onto her school bus, which takes around 4 minutes but blocks our little street, which really makes us so angry, as well as the other sane. People that witness it. Naively, we thought this would be the extent of our unpleasant interactions. In September, we woke up like on any other Monday morning to find a shiny BMW parked in our disabled spot. It wasn't just partially in it, it was positioned perfectly to take up the entire spot. To make things worse, there were about a dozen open spots on the block, and it's not like they were all vacated that morning since we woke up at 6 a.m. We were baffled. I'd seen this car many times since last July, and it was definitely the same car, since there aren't many burgundy sports cars in our neighborhood. It was usually parked about 20 meters south on our street, so we knew it belonged to a neighbor a few doors down. We did all the basics in this type of situation. We took a picture, took down the license plate, and called the police to report it. The cops came by within the hour and wrote a big fat ticket. I believe it was for $700, but don't quote me on it because I can't remember exactly. Anyways, it was still a significant amount. At around noon, a smug, angry guy came knocking on my door. I had the day off from school and was home on my own. It was obvious that it was the owner of the car, so I made a quick decision to record the conversation, or screaming match, on my phone. I opened the door, and before I could say a thing, the douche lay into me. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and he's in his mid-40s, midlife crisis maybe. He accuses me of all things, ranging from putting up those signs this morning to frame him to being racist. He was East Asian, I believe, but we have a really diverse community. He goes on to say that disabled spots shouldn't even be a thing, that it's always empty, totally shooting himself in the foot based on his previous comments, that we should pay for his undeserved ticket, that it isn't even an inconvenience since the spot next to his was free and my sister could just get on the bus from there, blah, blah, blah. Once he finished, I said okay and shut the door on his furious face. He rang the doorbell another 5 times before storming off. To my satisfaction, the recording caught everything fairly clearly. In the evening, I told my parents what had happened and gave my dad a copy of the recording. We have a pretty tight-knit community, for the most part, and there is a neighborhood Facebook group with around 3,000 members. My dad decided to post a summary of what had happened along with the recording and a picture of the car in our spot on the page. There was immediate uproar, with people saying they would fight back or whatever. We were humbled by the feeling that our community was standing up for us, but we didn't think anything would come of it. The next day, I leave the house to go to school and walk by the guy's car, back in his normal spot, and notice that the front right tire was deflated. Upon closer inspection, it was slashed. As I said, our community is tight-knit, but I can't say I expected anything like this to happen. The guy must have seen the Facebook post because he didn't come back to our house to complain or accuse us of anything. The following weeks were sweet. Whenever I saw him in public, people would go up to him and remind him that he was a crappy human being. A bit harsh in my opinion, but they weren't my words. In November, his house had a for sale sign in the window. The house market had also gone down a bit. I'm always kind of curious about how much houses similar to ours are selling for compared to how much we paid for ours in 2010, so I knew what he paid for it in July. Once I saw the for sale sign, I rushed home and checked the local house listings, and lo and behold, he was selling for $90,000 less than what it was going for in July. He really wanted to get out of our neighborhood. While his crime wasn't nearly worth $90,000, I must say that I don't feel bad. Worst case scenario, he sells that obnoxious car of his, which would easily cover the lost money. Let's just say that we haven't had a single car parked in my sister's spot since.